By the early 1930s, few of the desert tribes, the Arunta, Pitjantjatjara, and Pintubi, remained in the vast inland which had been their country for thousands of years. With no property and intensely territorial, they were linked to the land by hunting customs and their beliefs. The drought had forced them to exchange their freedom and art of survival for what the white man offered. The Pintubi, a small group existing on the fringes of the Great Sandy Desert, were among the last of the tribes forced into contact with the white man. A few chose to live out the drought under their own sky. Others sought survival in European missions. To keep their group alive, two elders, Chungarai and Jabanadi, led them east. Survival meant that only the fit could travel, and one of their group was too old and sick. He would be left to follow if he could. To the aged warrior, acceptance of what his leaders said was part of his tribal destiny, nothing less. The children also understood the grandmother, whose ancient chanting explained why the ailing man had to be abandoned. So, as the others moved away, the old man chanted words to tell his ancestral spirits he would soon join them. He felt no bitterness at being left behind. Others could walk. He could not. Death would be his release. The group moved on. The land became greener. There would be life-giving water somewhere ahead, or if not, they would continue walking. But it was there, in the bed of a dried-out creek. Late one afternoon, the two leaders of the group discovered something which puzzled them. Strange marks in the sand. They were the footprints of a white man, but they couldn't know this. As they examined the tracks, they wondered whether they could have been made by Mamu, the devil creature others had told them about. Next day, another mystery. Strings that stretched out of sight and made a noise when hit. Cautiously, they made their way through the fence and into the world of the white man. A soaring kestrel, and later on a colony of desert finches, were clear signs to the Pintubi that water was close by. But the soaring windmill, turning and giving out strange sounds, was something beyond their comprehension. They didn't need to dig for water. This monstrous thing somehow sucked it from the earth. And nearby were animals such as they had never seen or imagined to exist. The spirits must surely have guided them here to more water than they could ever drink, and an abundance of meat. Never before had there been so much for the group to share. The largest creature they hunted was the kangaroo, small compared with these beasts. Hungry, they waited for the four-footed monsters to come to the water, and then stalked them as they had kangaroos. But there was no fun in the hunt. The animal they picked out was easy to kill. Too hungry to cook in the traditional way, they threw parts of the animal on the fire and cut large chunks of meat to pass around. The meat was fatter and tougher than any kangaroo, but it was food, and there was plenty of it. Later, their stomachs full and the group contented, the men danced to thank the spirits for having brought them plenty. In their happiness, they didn't notice they were being watched, nor hear the sound of a man riding off with the news of the killing by Aborigines.
This car's like my best friend. It's demanding, it's obnoxious, and can be very, very thirsty. At times it's been my only company as I've crossed this great big brown land that we call Australia. We've been through a lot together, both good and bad. So join me, Ben Dark, as we travel across Australia from literally the middle of nowhere to some places that you just may have heard of.
An Aussie outback adventure unlike any other. Tomorrow night at 9:30 on National Geographic Channel.
I like photographing with people and like interacting with people, and this gives me the opportunity to be close and friendly and take the time and show an interest in what people are doing, getting into their lifestyle, how they live their day, how they go about shopping, and just the social interaction that happens. I was out in Tayo in 1983 for the first time, and I've been out several times since, and not an awful lot has changed. They still rely on fishing. People are friendly. I often don't know the language people speak, but I find that if I can smile and take my time, then I can get a kind of sense of communication going. Often in the city, you don't get that opportunity. People are running about, they're just moving too fast. Whereas here, I can actually sit down, I can have a cup of tea, I can have a laugh, I can get interested in what they're doing. You know how I see Hong Kong is a place of contrasts where you can have really quiet, interesting rural village life as well as a teeming, bustling city as well. So that's really how I see Hong Kong.
All seemed safe to the Pintubi, and they spent the next day gathering berries and wild honey. Late that afternoon, it all came to an end. Terror struck them as unbelievable creatures on animals even stranger than the one they had killed appeared like visions from the dreamtime.
You're not satisfied with killing the cows when it's on the bloody station.
One small boy attempted to escape until a sound like thunder brought him down.
Hey now, you right?
Only slightly wounded, he was picked up to be taken away. The others didn't resist, possessed of a fear beyond anything they had ever known.
Cook your leg out. That's right. You just hang on there.
They dropped their spears and woomeras and were forced to march in this year of 1932 to a nearby mission. Their life of freedom had ended.
Oh,
4 years of mission life passed, and some of the Pintubi still yearned for the old days. When they could, they sought what they missed most: freedom to roam and live off the wealth of the land. During these moments of freedom, the men used modern tools to secretly make hunting spears. As they roamed the bush, planning their escape from the mission, they again could taste flowers from a tree that white men ignored, that were sweeter to the Pintubi than jam and sugar. But food alone was not the only reason to leave the mission. Every memory of their ancient homeland called them back to the life they had loved. Once again, they lifted the barbed wire that was the boundary between one lifestyle and another. They now wore clothes, but their oneness with their ancestral spirits remained. Their first taste of freedom was to settle for the night where they chose, a campsite that provided both food and water. Their old life was back. The children once again played their favorite game, searching for birds' eggs. And one warrior, Bulla, checked his woomera, knowing that kangaroos would come to drink. Needed first was fire. It cooked their food, kept them warm, and held at bay evil spirits that roamed the dark nights. As the sun began to set for the day, Bulla walked off to hunt for food. Fire was one of the Aborigines' most precious gifts. It drove animals from their hiding places to meet the hunting spears and revitalized the land year after year. The flames were blazing as Bulla returned with his prey for the great trinity: food, water, and fire. Next day, they moved nearer the desert they had left 4 years before. What lay ahead left them with emotions of pleasure and doubt. For they were now in white man's clothing. Mission life had been too easy, and they may never recapture their former freedom. Finally, they met a group of Pintubi who were the true desert dwellers, the ones who had remained behind. And although the ceremonial greeting was traditional, their reunion was sad, beyond what they were doing, mourning the deaths of their ancestors. It was sad because the watching women and children knew what had been decided, that mission life had made them too soft to live as once they had. The hats they exchanged were symbols of another way of life, the white man's. Chungarai's great dream of becoming again a man of the desert had failed. He and his group would remain Pintubi only in name.
Take a closer look at what's happening in science with quantum. Quantum, Sundays at 7 on National Geographic Channel.
Among the desert dwellers was a young man who would one day be given the name Nosepeg. Fascinated, he had listened to the strange tales of the white man and his ways. Could they be true? He would find out and then return to his own tribe. He decided to follow them east, a decision that ensured his life would never again be the same. Unseen, Nosepeg kept watch that night as Chungarai and his group mourned the loss of their ancestral heritage. Cold, hungry, and without a protective fire, the young man could not resist moving closer to the group. But the dark night was full of evil spirits, and a malicious one tripped him. Chungarai heard rocks falling, but dismissed it as an animal. Helpless and in pain, but accepting his fate, the young Pintubi lay silent through the bitterly cold night. Nosepeg watched silently as the group moved off. In agony, he forced his way to the dying embers of the fire, and for several days huddled by it, without food or water. Eventually, strange sounds added to this lonely terror. Strange, unknown creatures lurched toward him through the sand. He was too weak to find a place to hide, too demoralized and inexperienced. He had made contact with his first white men.
He's like a proper wild one, Rex. Nose big and all. Seems to have something wrong with his legs. Might have to take him along with us. He might be some use. Push down there. Push. 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 Let's get a bit of that spare clobber out of here, Rex. See if we make him a little bit more civilized.
The camel traders gave the frightened young man clothes to wear and a name to carry for the rest of his life.
You know, feel like a white man. Clothing. Here's some white man's clobber. It's all right, boy. We'll look after you. We'll take you on the camel. Trousers.
Where?
He's right. We'll go on the camel. You put him on.
Where?
Like this. Put it on.
Where?
Get rid of that nose peg too.
Where? Where?
They agreed that the young man could help their search for wild camels.
He's right, boy. Hang on there, I'll swing your leg around for you. All right. Yeah, you hang on tight.
He didn't understand what these men said, but they seemed friendly.
Just so you won't feel lonely. Hold him on tight. Now hang on. We're getting up. Up.
The strange things itched his body, but he was now warm as the camel carried him from the familiar into the unknown. To all Australian Aborigines, the land is their religion, their soul, and their entire identity. In the years that followed, Nosepeg discovered that the white man only wanted from the land what he could take from it.
Anything worthwhile up there, Ed?
A few odds and ends. One here worth keeping. Have to remember this place, worth another visit.
For 15 years, Nosepeg had, willingly or not, been a servant of camel traders, cattlemen, and prospectors. He had become used to their ways and understood their language.
You got the tea made, Nosepeg.
Yes, boss.
Good, I'm dying for a cuppa.
His jobs were menial, far from the freedom he had enjoyed as a youth. But without his knowledge and experience, the prospectors could not have moved without the threat of death into this vast, measureless land. During the day, the prospectors looked for mineral rocks. Nosepeg was the camp man. Many times he thought of running off in the hope of finding his lost people, but the white man's authority was too strong. In fact, he was the wisest of all, because only skills honed by thousands of years of survival could find the life-giving water.
Oh, we're finished around this area.
So we're heading out for this country now?
Yeah.
How'd you go, Nose Pig?
Got some water.
Good boy.
Year after year, Nosepeg wistfully watched invasion after invasion of his country. The final one, the international tourists, flocking to the once sacred monolith called Uluru. Now, after 50 years of being dominated, Nosepeg's life had turned full cycle. In his 70s, too old for white bosses, he was again in Pintubi country. His mission had been to lead his people back to their land in what is termed the outstation movement. The urge to return had never died. But to what? Drinking from a small rock waterhole shared by his forefathers for centuries, Nosepeg realized that the life he once knew was gone forever. The sky and the rocks were the same, but only inside the cave did he feel a sense of belonging.
Every Sunday at 7:30 on National Geographic Channel.
An extraordinary woman on an adventure through South America. First she enters an amateur bullfight, then injuries and all continues her action-packed journey along the Inca Road in Sacred Valley modern times. Next.
Alice Springs, a modern city of more than 20,000 people, had not existed when Nosepeg's ancestors roamed the desert. Here, the two cultures met and often clashed. The land had been stolen from Nosepeg and his people, and they were the disinherited. The family now lived in two worlds, one of plenty, the other livable only through government support.
Ice cream? Huh? No.
What color is this one here?
Any kind.
While all Aborigines now have citizenship rights, some have paid a high price. Alice Springs promises the easy life. But here at Kintor Camp is where Nosepeg and his people choose to live. Established in the early 1980s, Kintor is as far as possible from those European influences which prove so degrading and destructive. At the camp, Pintubi children are born into a world their parents never knew. Much of their education is European-based, but they also learn about their traditional tribal culture. The music the children play is not of their people, but their skills won a primary school competition in Darwin, a large city in the north their parents have never seen. In Nosepeg's youth, the desert country was a vast storehouse of natural food. His old age pension now buys it ready-made. The white man's fruit and vegetables make a change from more traditional food. Nowadays, their diet is more varied. While the men do not hunt as often, the Pintubi women still enjoy digging and foraging in the traditional way. For thousands of years, the Pintubi drew symbols in the sands of findable campsites, waterholes, and sacred spots. Now, these symbols are painted to sell to tourists and art galleries all over the world. But whatever the future holds, there will always be the dream time. To Aborigines, it's the beginning of all things and never ending. Every man and woman is born to inherit and cherish a dreaming. Mystic and tangible, the dream time is essential to their ethos because it means an understanding of the world and its creation. For days, these Pintubi have been talking about a visit to a sacred cave where they believe the Dreamtime fire rested on its journey across the land. They must plan carefully to be certain that their timing will please the ancestral spirits. Only those men whose totemic signs are propitious will be selected. Nosepeg is one. But this old man, too old and frail to make the journey, will stay behind. Because the Dreamtime embraces the past and the present, instead of walking for days, they're able to use a four-wheel drive vehicle to get them to their destination in a matter of hours. At the cave, they return to the past. This man must be the first to enter it and sing a sacred chant. The law decrees that each must pick an ancestral branch before following. Every action is according to a ritual which, without a written language, has been passed down as sacred messages from generation to generation. Only when every law has been obeyed do the men join in the chanting. For the chosen few, this homage to their ancestral spirits is a vital part of the ritual. The pole is taken down by 3 men, the only ones allowed to remove it. It marks the sacred spot where the Dreamtime fire slept on its eternal journey. Once again, the present is equal to the past. Not the ochres their ancestors used, but modern acrylic paint. Only the significance of the ritual is unchanged. The land to which the Pintubi belong is timeless. These ceremonies will continue as tribal elders pass to the young the customs and rituals of their dreaming. It's this unshakable belief that when Aborigines give up their Dreamtime and all it means, they lose everything. No longer can they be a mystical part of a mystical land. And this must never be allowed to happen.